Silence descended on the grand ballroom when 50 heavily armed elite warriors snapped to attention. Seconds before, a pompous billionaire had ordered me to fetch his coat, completely unaware that the woman he was mocking commanded the most lethal operators on the planet. Keep listening to hear him break. Crystal chandeliers cast a fractured, icy light across the marble foyer of the Freeman estate. Stepping through the massive oak double doors felt less like arriving at a family reunion and more like crossing the threshold of a hostile foreign embassy. Beside me, Dad nervously adjusted the cuffs of his worn, off-the-rack suit. He had spent the entire flight from Virginia to New York subtly trying to smooth out the wrinkles, a futile gesture that only highlighted his anxiety. Ridge Freeman, Dad's older brother, had built an empire in corporate acquisitions. He collected companies the way other men collected stamps, and he treated people with the exact same level of transactional detachment. Because Dad had chosen a quiet life as a high school history teacher, Ridge viewed him as a genetic anomaly, a weak link in the Freeman bloodline. And because I had joined the Navy instead of pursuing an MBA at an Ivy League school, Ridge viewed me as an absolute tragedy. "Remember, Sydney," Dad murmured, his voice tight. "We are only here for your grandmother's birthday. 2 days. We can survive Ridge for 2 days." "I survived Hell Week, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice low and offering him a reassuring smile. "I think I can handle a few cocktails with Uncle Ridge." Footsteps echoed from the top of the grand sweeping staircase. There he was. Ridge descended like a monarch inspecting his peasants, flanked by his daughter, Brittany. Ridge wore a bespoke Italian suit that probably cost more than my first car, while Brittany was draped in designer silk, typing furiously on her phone without bothering to look up. "Aiton!" Ridge boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. He reached the bottom and offered Dad a stiff, obligatory pat on the back. "You made it. I was worried your old sedan wouldn't make it to the airport." "It's good to see you, Ridge," Dad said politely, absorbing the insult without flinching. He was a gentleman, and he hated conflict. Ridge's sharp, calculating gaze snapped to me. He looked me up and down, taking in my simple black dress and sensible flats. I had intentionally packed light. My dress uniform, heavy with gold stripes and medals, was safely hidden away in a thick garment bag upstairs in my assigned guest room. "And little Sammy," Ridge said, a patronizing smirk playing on his lips. "Still playing sailor?" "I'm still serving." "Yes," I answered, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. It had been years since I last saw Ridge, and in that time, I had earned the rank of Captain in 06 in the United States Navy. I was the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Group 8, overseeing hundreds of elite SEALs and support personnel. But to Ridge, who only understood the world through the lens of corporate ladders and stock portfolios, the military was a place for people who couldn't cut it in the real world. Right. Doing the government's clerical work, Ridge chuckled, waving a hand dismissively. "Brittany, say hello to your uncle and cousin." Brittany finally looked up from her screen. "Oh, hey. Wow, Sam, you look really comfortable." She dragged the word out, making it sound like a synonym for pathetic. "Did you just get off a shift at the motor pool or something?" "Something like that," I replied smoothly. "Well, try to spruce up a bit for tomorrow night," Ridge instructed, turning away as if the conversation was already boring him. "I'm hosting a massive charity gala right here on the estate, raising money for wounded veterans. It's excellent PR for the firm, of course, but it's also a chance to rub elbows with some real power players. The governor will be here, several board members, and my guests of honor, a highly decorated Navy SEAL team." Dad blinked, looking at me, then back to Ridge. "A SEAL team?" "Yes, Aitan. Real heroes," Ridge said, puffing out his chest. "I made a very generous donation to a veterans foundation, and the Navy is sending a detachment from a special warfare group to attend. They just got back from some classified mission in the Middle East. The media is going crazy over them. Having them here will guarantee me the cover of Forbes." Ridge paused, looking back at me with a condescending glint in his eye. "They are being led by a Captain S. Rivera. I spoke to the base liaison about him. Supposedly, this Rivera is an absolute terror, a real man's man. Kicked down doors, saved hostages. You might want to take notes, Sammy. It's a shame your married name is Rivera, too." gives you delusions of grandeur, doesn't it? If only you were a man, maybe people would confuse you for him. I felt Dad stiffen beside me. He opened his mouth to correct his arrogant brother, to tell him that my late husband, who died in combat, had given me that name, and that I was Captain S. Rivera. But I quickly placed a hand on Dad's arm, squeezing gently. "I'll be sure to keep my distance, Uncle Ridge," I said, a slow, icy smile spreading across my face. "I wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of such important men." "See that you don't," Ridge scoffed, turning toward the dining room. "Now, come along. Dinner is getting cold, and I have a briefing with my security team to ensure the perimeter is secure for tomorrow. I hired a private firm, ex-mercenaries, real tough guys. Not like the people you push papers for, Sammy." As we followed him, Dad leaned in and whispered, "Why didn't you let me tell him?" "Because, Dad," I whispered back, my smile widening into something genuinely predatory, "some tactical traps are just too perfectly laid to waste." The following evening, the Freeman estate was transformed into a glittering fortress of extreme wealth. Valets sprinted up and down the circular driveway, parking a parade of Bentleys, Ferraris, and armored SUVs. Caterers carried trays of champagne and caviar through the manicured gardens, while a string quartet played softly near the infinity pool. I stood near the grand staircase, out of the way, observing the spectacle. I hadn't changed into my uniform yet. The gala was scheduled to last for hours, and the official military presentation wasn't until 8 o'clock. For now, I wore a simple, elegant, dark gray evening gown. Dad was beside me, looking handsome in a freshly pressed tuxedo I had secretly bought for him the day before. Ridge was in his element, holding court by the massive fireplace in the main hall. He was laughing loudly, swirling a glass of scotch, surrounded by politicians and business tycoons. "Look at him," Dad sighed, shaking his head. "He hasn't changed a bit. If anything, the money has just amplified his worst traits." "Arrogance is a loud disguise for insecurity," I replied, sipping my sparkling water. Suddenly, Ridge spotted us. His expression soured slightly, but he plastered on a fake booming laugh and marched over, trailed by a massive, square-jawed man wearing an ill-fitting suit and a permanent scowl. "Aiton! Sammy!" Ridge greeted us, though his eyes were darting around, looking for more important people. "Enjoying the free food?" "It's a beautiful event, Ridge," Dad said diplomatically. "Of course it is. I spared no expense," Ridge bragged. He gestured to the large man beside him. "This is Miller, head of my private security detail tonight. Miller used to be an Army Ranger, did 2 tours. Now he works for me." Miller puffed out his chest, looking down at me with an unimpressed sneer. "Evening." Miller here was just running me through the security protocols for when Captain Rivera and his SEALs arrive, Ridge continued, emphasizing the word his. "They'll be pulling up in armored transports at exactly 1900 hours. We have a dedicated red carpet for them." "Sounds very precise," I noted. "It is precise, Sammy," Miller grunted, crossing his massive arms. "Special operations don't run on civilian time. We are maintaining a hard perimeter. Nobody gets near those operators without my clearance." "Good man," Ridge patted Miller's thick shoulder. Then Ridge turned his full condescending attention back to me. "Speaking of logistics, Sammy, I have a bit of a situation." "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow. "One of the event coordinators called in sick." Ridge sighed, making a dramatic show of looking inconvenienced. "And quite frankly, some of the junior catering staff are completely disorganized. They're dropping coats, mixing up VIP name tags. It's a mess." Dad frowned. "Ridge, surely you have enough staff to handle." "I need someone with a bit of discipline to whip them into shape," Ridge interrupted, his eyes locking onto mine with a mocking challenge. "You're used to standing in a corner and checking off lists, right, Sammy? Quartermaster stuff? Inventory?" "I have experience with personnel management." "Yes," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Perfect," Ridge smiled, showing far too many teeth. "Do your uncle a favor. Head over to the front vestibule. Take charge of the coat check and the guest registry. Make sure these bumbling idiots stop holding up the line. And when Captain Rivera arrives, I want you to personally ensure his team's gear is stowed securely. Can you handle that? Or is that above your pay grade?" Dad stepped forward, his face flushing with rare anger. "Ridge, that is completely unacceptable. Sydney is a guest here. She is a decorated officer in the United States Navy, and you will not treat her like the hired help." "Aiton, relax," Ridge scoffed, rolling his eyes. "It's a family favor. She's not exactly bringing any high society networking value to the table tonight, is she? The least she can do is earn her keep. Besides, she should be honored to handle the coats of real warriors." Dad opened his mouth to shout, but I cut him off, stepping smoothly between them. "It's fine, Dad," I said, locking eyes with Ridge. "I would be absolutely delighted to greet Captain Rivera and his team when they arrive." Ridge smirked, clearly mistaking my compliance for submission. "Good girl. Keep your head down, Sammy, and try not to stare too much when the real military men walk in. Miller, come with me. Let's check the VIP lounge." As Ridge and his rent-a-guard stalked off, Dad turned to me, his hands shaking slightly. "Sydney, why did you let him talk to you like that? You are a captain. You command the very men he is throwing a parade for." "Dad," I said softly, checking my watch. It was 18:30 hours. 30 minutes until my team arrived. If I told him now, he would just find a way to spin it. He'd make a scene, claim I deceived him, and steal the narrative. I reached down and picked up the small, secure satellite phone I carried in my evening bag. I dialed a quick, encrypted sequence. "Master Chief?" I said when the line clicked open. "Captain," the gravelly voice of Master Chief Petty Officer Jackson Miller, my actual second in command, and a man who had more combat deployments than my uncle had tailored suits, responded instantly. "We are 5 mics out from the designated rally point. Transports are fueled and polished. The boys are restless. What's the word?" "Change of uniform protocol, Master Chief," I ordered, my eyes drifting across the lavish ballroom. Full dress whites, medals, the whole show. "But I need you to hold at the perimeter until exactly 1915 hours. Delaying 15 mics. Copy that, ma'am. Is there a tactical reason?" "A strategic one," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. "The host has requested that I personally manage the front door. I need time to change into my working gear." "Understood, Captain. See you at the door." I hung up the phone and looked at my father. The anxiety in his eyes had slowly morphed into a glimmer of realization. He knew that tone of voice. It was the tone I used when a plan was fully locked in. "Dad," I said, handing him my empty water glass, "I'm going upstairs to my room for a few minutes. I need to put on my coat." "Your coat?" he asked, a slow, proud smile finally breaking through his frustration. "Yes," I nodded, turning toward the grand staircase. "Uncle Ridge wants me to show the real warriors how to stand at attention. I wouldn't want to disappoint him." Stepping into my guest suite, the muffled, pulsating bass of the string quartet downstairs faded into absolute silence. Unzipping the heavy canvas garment bag laid out on the king-sized bed revealed the stark, pristine fabric of my Navy service dress whites. Pinning on my ribbons took time, requiring a meticulous attention to detail that had been drilled into me since my days at the academy. The Navy Cross, the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, each piece of enameled metal and colored ribbon carried the immense weight of lost friends, endless nights in hostile territory, and impossible odds overcome. My late husband's worn golden wedding band rested on a silver chain beneath my collar, cool and grounding against my collarbone. Securing the golden eagle collar devices of a captain onto my lapels, I pulled my white cover firmly onto my head. Looking in the full-length mirror, the submissive, quiet niece who had absorbed insults in the foyer had vanished entirely. The commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Group 8 stared back, cold, calculated, and ready for deployment. Descending the back servant staircase to avoid the main party, I slipped into the front vestibule just before 1900 hours. The junior catering staff was frantic, running back and forth with trays of champagne, flutes, and hors d'oeuvres. Calmly, I positioned myself behind the polished mahogany coat check counter. My crisp, white uniform stood in stark contrast to the dim, moody, ambient lighting of the modern entryway. But in the chaos, the overworked staff barely registered my presence. Ridge burst into the foyer a few moments later, his face flushed with a mixture of excitement and expensive scotch. Brittany trailed sluggishly behind him, loudly complaining to a friend on her phone about the slow estate Wi-Fi. Ridge paced like a caged tiger, barking orders at the valets and event coordinators. "They are arriving any minute," Ridge shouted at a terrified young valet. "Line up! Look sharp! If there is a single scratch on those armored vehicles, I will personally see to it that you never work in this state again." He finally turned his head toward the coat check area. His eyes swept over my uniform, but the overwhelming arrogance hardwired into his brain completely short-circuited his ability to comprehend what he was actually seeing. To a man like Ridge, military uniforms were nothing more than theatrical costumes meant to convey a brand. He saw the gold stripes and shiny medals and simply assumed I had rummaged through a costume shop to properly serve the real heroes of the evening. "Well, don't you look festive, Sammy?" Ridge sneered, walking over to adjust his own silk tie in the reflective glass of the vestibule window. "I'm genuinely glad you decided to put on your little marching band outfit. It makes the hired help look much more official. Just remember your job tonight. When Captain Rivera walks through those double doors, you wait patiently until I shake his hand, and then you step forward and offer to take his cover and jacket. Do not speak unless spoken to. We do not want to bore these operators with your low-level clerical anecdotes." Dad appeared in the archway leading to the ballroom, holding a glass of ginger ale. His eyes immediately widened as he took in my full dress uniform. He stood taller, a fierce, silent pride radiating from his posture. He caught my eye, and I gave him a barely perceptible nod. The trap was fully set. Headlights violently swept across the frosted glass of the massive double doors. The deep, synchronized, bone-rattling rumble of heavy diesel engines vibrated through the marble floorboards. The VIP guests, having been tipped off by Ridge, began spilling out of the ballroom. The state governor, a dozen tech billionaires, and various socialites crowded into the foyer behind my uncle, eager to rub elbows with the famous covert operators they had read about in the news. "Open the doors, Miller!" Ridge snapped, pointing frantically at his hulking security chief. The ex-ranger reached for the heavy brass handles, but as he pulled the doors open and stepped back, his eyes inadvertently swept over the coat check counter. Miller froze instantly. His gaze locked onto my Golden Eagle collar devices, then dropped to my chest, tracking the distinct rows of combat decorations. The color completely drained from his rugged face. His jaw went slack. He knew exactly what an 06 looked like, and he knew damn well what a Navy Cross represented. He tried to speak, to desperately warn his billionaire boss, but his vocal cords seemed utterly paralyzed by the shock of his discovery. "Out of the way, Miller, you are blocking the entrance," Ridge grumbled, shoving past his own security guard and stepping out onto the grand portico with a wide, heavily rehearsed, camera-ready smile. Flashbulbs from hired paparazzi and private photographers erupted in a blinding cascade, illuminating the circular driveway like a lightning storm. 3 massive, matte black armored military transports sat idling, their heavy engines purring menacingly. The rear hydraulic doors of the vehicles dropped in perfect, terrifying unison. Out stepped 50 men, moving with silent, predatory precision. They wore immaculate service dress whites, their chests heavy with prestigious combat decorations, their covers pulled aggressively low over their eyes. These were men who had breached heavily fortified compounds in pitch darkness, surviving kinetic environments that would shatter ordinary humans. Now, they stood on a billionaire's pristine driveway, exuding a quiet, lethal menace that made the lavish, glittering estate feel incredibly fragile and superficial. At the absolute front of the strict formation stood Master Chief Petty Officer Jackson Miller, a towering wall of dense muscle and faded scar tissue. He looked like a man violently carved from granite. Ridge practically bounded down the marble steps, extending both hands in a gesture of exaggerated welcome. "Welcome. Welcome to Freeman Manor, gentlemen. I am Ridge Freeman, your host and primary benefactor for this evening. We are incredibly honored to host you. Please tell me, which one of you is Captain Rivera? I have a highly exclusive vintage champagne waiting inside for the commanding officer." The operators did not move a single inch. They did not blink. They stared straight through Ridge as if he were nothing more than a pane of dirty glass obstructing their view. Master Chief Jackson Miller stepped forward, ignoring Ridge's outstretched, eager hand entirely. The Master Chief's cold steel gray eyes swept over the crowded foyer, deliberately bypassing the governor, the wealthy billionaires, and the flashing cameras. His intense gaze locked directly onto the coat check counter. "Team! Attention!" The Master Chief's voice cracked through the crisp night air like a heavy sniper rifle shot. 50 pairs of highly polished heels snapped together with a deafening, unified crack. The sheer, violent force of the movement made Brittany physically flinch and drop her expensive smartphone onto the hard marble floor. Master Chief Jackson Miller pivoted sharply on his heel, facing the coat check area directly. He raised his right hand in a razor-sharp, flawless salute. Instantly, 49 other hands whipped to the brims of their white covers in magnificent synchronization. "Attention on deck!" the Master Chief roared, his gravelly voice echoing aggressively off the vaulted ceilings and rattling the crystal chandeliers. Presenting the commanding officer, Naval Special Warfare Group 8. Silence crashed down over the estate. It was a thick, suffocating, absolute silence. Ridge abruptly stopped breathing. He turned slowly, moving as if submerged in wet concrete, his incredibly confused eyes tracking the specific direction of the SEAL's salutes. He looked past the stunned valets, past his totally paralyzed security chief, and finally focused his gaze on the woman standing calmly behind the mahogany counter. Stepping out from behind the coat check desk, I walked slowly and deliberately into the dead center of the foyer. The rhythmic, authoritative click of my heels against the polished marble sounded like a ticking countdown clock, marking the definitive end of Ridge's reign of arrogance. Stopping a few feet from the open doors, I returned the salute with crisp, practiced precision. "Stand down, Master Chief." "At ease, gentlemen." My voice carried effortlessly through the cavernous space, echoing with absolute command. "Aye, aye, Captain." The 50 men dropped their salutes as one singular entity, shifting smoothly into a relaxed but highly alert parade rest. Ridge looked exactly like he had been struck by a high-voltage lightning bolt. His mouth opened and closed silently, resembling a fish gasping for air on a dry dock. "Sammy?" he sputtered, his usually booming voice cracking into a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. What is the meaning of this? Why are these men saluting my coat girl?" Master Chief Jackson Miller took one incredibly fast, menacing step toward Ridge, his weathered face dark with raw fury. "You will immediately address the captain with the respect her rank and station demands, civilian. Captain Sydney Rivera is the most lethal, highly decorated operator I have ever had the distinct privilege to follow into hell. She commands this warfare group. She commands us, not you. And certainly not your checkbook." The state governor, standing frozen near the grand staircase, audibly gasped, suddenly realizing the monumental, career-ending disrespect that had just occurred under Ridge's roof. Furious, hushed whispers erupted among the billionaires and investors. The optics of insulting a decorated war hero in front of the press were catastrophic for the Freeman corporate empire. "Uncle Ridge," I said, my tone perfectly mild but coated in absolute frost. "Earlier tonight, you explicitly asked me to greet the team. You wanted me to handle the logistics at the door. I am simply executing the exact job you assigned me. Now, would you like me to take your coat? You seem to be sweating profusely." Dad walked up beside me, a massive, brilliantly triumphant grin lighting up his previously anxious face. He didn't need to say a single word, letting the sheer, crushing weight of the moment grind his older brother's inflated ego into fine dust. Ridge trembled violently, his face turning a blotchy, panicked shade of crimson. I made a massive charitable donation. I paid for this appearance." "You paid a veterans charity, Ridge," I corrected smoothly, stepping closer until I was mere inches from his terrified face. "You cannot buy loyalty, you cannot buy honor, and you certainly cannot buy me. We are here strictly to support wounded operators. My men will stay for exactly 1 hour to honor that foundational commitment, and then my team is leaving this circus. Tomorrow morning, my public affairs officer will release an official press statement thanking the Charity Foundation, while very politely, very publicly distancing Naval Special Warfare from your specific corporate sponsorships." I paused, letting the reality of his ruined PR stunt wash over him. You desperately wanted the cover of Forbes, Ridge. Instead, you'll be universally known as the pathetic man who tried to make a combat commander work his coat check. Turning my back on him completely, I faced my men, who were grinning like hungry wolves. Master Chief, secure the perimeter and direct the men to the buffet. Let's show these corporate executives what real honor looks like. Hoo-yah, Captain! The elite team shouted in unison, proudly filing past Ridge into the grand ballroom. They left the pompous billionaire standing entirely alone in the massive foyer, utterly and completely destroyed by the quiet niece he had tried to humiliate. Listen up, story lovers. If this epic tale of arrogant billionaires getting exactly what they deserve got your blood pumping, smash that like button right now. Don't forget to share this incredible moment of sweet, glorious karma with your friends, and hit subscribe to join our community for more dramatic, jaw-dropping stories every single week. Your support keeps these thrilling real-life adventures coming.